In this week's review, we're going to take a look at Extermination, a survival horror game developed by Deep Space, published by Sony Computer Entertainment, and released on the PS2 in June of 2001. But before we get started, I just wanted to say that if you like this video, please do hit the like button, as it really does help the channel. If you're looking for more videos like this, then hit the subscribe button, and if you've played this game before, I'd love to hear your comments, so comment down below. Now let's move on to the review. Extermination kicks off with a group of Special Force Marines taking a plane ride over to the South Pole as they are responding to an SOS from a top-secret research facility. You take control of Dennis Riley, a fresh-faced member of the Marines, who parachutes in alongside his teammate Roger to discover just what's going on. Initially, the place looks deserted with facilities powered down and not a person in sight, but it isn't long before things take a wrong turn. Your friend seems to get infected by some mysterious virus, and suddenly, Dennis is now involved in saving the world from potential extinction. I know that might seem like I'm oversimplifying the plot, but it really is that straightforward. I suppose what you want to know is whether the story is interesting, and I'd have to say, for a game in 2001, it's perfectly acceptable. The delivery of the dialogue is something I'll cover later. However, if you're looking for a short sum-up of what to expect from this narrative, I would say that it seemed like somebody played Resident Evil and Metal Gear Solid and really liked those games.
Don't move!
I had no choice. You were next.
Extermination is one of the trickiest games I've ever had to talk about because its gameplay could be considered both good and bad depending on your perspective. The objective of my videos is to inform you if a game has held up and is still worth picking up today, but for this game it really does depend on what you are after. It is a survival horror game from 2001 in every sense of the word, and it isn't just similar to Resident Evil in terms of story either. It's got everything you'd expect, from working your way through a facility in search of items to unlock doors, the occasional backtracking, combat with infected humans and creatures with somewhat limited resources, and even a save system in which you can only use when you have enough power in your portable battery. There are some additions that it has over Resident Evil, such as a bit of platforming here and there. You can climb over objects, jump gaps, and shimmy across ledges. It also has weapon customization, as you can fit your assault rifle with different scopes, a flashlight, secondary fire options, and more. The most notable difference is the game's infection rate. You basically have two health bars, one which depletes as you take hits, and another which rises every time you take a hit from someone infected. If your infection rate reaches 100%, your health bar is massively knocked down, and you slowly start to lose your remaining health, sort of like if you had been poisoned. You can use health items to fight off the infection, and there are stations in the game that will 100% cure you, but the infection rate is an interesting mechanic to throw into a game like this, as it does create some scenarios in which it's best to just run rather than take the risk against the enemies. When coming up against any one of these infected monsters, again, it is a survival horror game from 2001, which means not feeling very mobile in combat, although it does have an auto-aim feature that helps quite a lot, even if it doesn't work 100% of the time. I cannot stress enough just how much Extermination is a product of its time, so much so that all of my complaints can sort of be written off by just saying, well, that's how games were made back then. By today's standards, the movement is stiff, the aiming is imprecise, the platforming is awkward, the menus are poor, and the pacing of the experience is dreadfully slow. At the same time, I actually played this game once shortly after its release, and I don't remember having any problems with it at all, other than my 11-year-old self occasionally getting confused on what I needed to do next. So in the context of how I run this channel, which is looking at how games have held up, it's really a hard game to recommend unless you're into this kind of thing, but if you are, then this is definitely a hidden gem that you missed back in the early 2000s. Another way in which I have conflicting opinions on this title is how it looks, because in terms of its design and creative angle, it is incredibly bland, generic and boring, with almost no flavour to it at all, but from a technical angle, I do actually think the game is rendered quite well and looks sharp, even if it also looks uninspired. I never noticed any drops in the frame rate, nothing stood out to me as unpolished, and overall I don't think I saw many technical hiccups, unless you are counting the slow loading times of when the screen fades to black and pulls up the inventory menu every single single time you pick up any item. The uninspired design trend continues with the sound design. For the most part, these sound effects are okay, but the soundtrack itself is the definition of royalty-free. What also harms the experience is the performances of the voice actors. Now, I know things back in 2001 weren't exactly outstanding in this department, but the line delivery here reaches levels of bad that it almost comes back around to being enjoyable.
I haven't been able to contact you ever since that day.
Dennis, your being here is just a coincidence? Well, whatever. I don't have anything left to say to you. Just leave me alone.
Extermination is a fantastic example of how games were made back in this period, so in ways that does increase its value in my opinion because it captures the vibe of this era of gaming more than almost any other game I've played on this channel. It hasn't really aged well, and unless you're a huge fan of the genre and the old school feel, or very curious about some deep cuts from this generation, you're probably best leaving this game alone. I genuinely can't think of how I can give this game anything higher or lower than a 3 out of 5, because for 2001 it was more than solid. But time has also been very unkind to it, and while that middling score may not be useful to your purchase decision, I hope this video gives you enough context to make up your own mind.